From Bob Marley scrimmages by 56 Hope Road and across the globe, to the various schoolboy competitions that awaken our school pride every year, to the reggae boys and girls rising up to the World Cup stage, it's easy to see why football has been a major part of Jamaica's fabric since independence. It hasn't allowed us to capture gold or become rich with pride like our beloved track and field has, but there have been still quite a few moments to treasure over the years in the beautiful game. Some are well known to even the most casual fan, some are long forgotten even by the most astute of followers, but all are important in their own way when talking about the sport we love in this land we love. From youth level to the big men and women that worked hard to put us on the footballing map, our first original top 10 looks at the best moments our national teams have produced to date. Number 10. Bunny springs to the goal scoring record. We kick off this list with a woman branded with the nickname Bunny, who I personally call the Energizer Bunny because she keeps going and going and going to bigger and better things. Ever since her first call up to the scene on Reggae Girlz in 2015, Khadija Munifa Shaw, the pride of St. Catherine, has been powering the national team with her sharp eye for goal. That eye had great things in sight from the beginning, scoring twice on debut against the Dominican Republic and never looking back. When she first came to prominence was during qualifying for the 2019 World Cup in France. Thanks to her 19 goals in qualifying, the most ever in any confederation, including strikes against Costa Rica, Cuba, and the Women's World Cup qualifying clincher against Panama, many watching eyes started hopping on the Bunny bandwagon from there on. Her impressive performances in friendlies against Chile and Scotland in particular only added to the attention, and 2 days before debuting at the Women's World Cup in France, she landed a deal with French First Division club Bordeaux. After a decent though goalless showing at the World Cup, she got right back on the score sheet for the girls, scoring 5 in an Olympic qualifier against the US Virgin Islands, breaking Luton Shelton's record for the most goals ever in a Jamaican national team jersey. That took her up to 40 goals, the fastest to 40 in CONCACAF history, by the way. And what's ridiculous about it is she did it in just 27 caps. At only 23 years old, and considering how well she's doing at Bordeaux, with 10 goals and 5 assists in her debut season, that record is sure to be obliterated going forward. Not only is she, alongside Leon Bailey, the new face of Jamaican football, she legitimately could become the biggest star, male or female, that we've ever produced. Number 9. Silver lining for the young boys in Rio. Surely forgotten, since technically it's not considered a major tournament by any stretch, and this is coming from somebody who worked there a few years ago when it was in Toronto, but it still was a notable feat and one that could have been so much better if not for a disputable ending. The Pan Am Games is usually a tournament for the under 20s to stand out, and in this case, at the 2007 edition in Rio de Janeiro, the South American side sent even younger squads than this because they were competing at that year's Under 17 World Cup. Nonetheless, nothing was expected from the young reggae boys in a group that included the likes of Argentina and Colombia, but thanks to former Jamaica college striker Kemar Daly, they defied those generally low expectations as his late strikes against both CONMEBOL sides helped Jamaica advance before the final group game was even played. After taking maximum points in their 3 group games, Jamaica continued their unlikely run by outlasting Mexico in the semifinals, advancing to the gold medal game against Ecuador. There, they enjoyed a dream start thanks to a 4th-minute strike by Eric Vernon, and for the most part it looked like they were going to hang on for a famous gold medal win. Unfortunately, Jefferson Montero dented those hopes with a goal in the 82nd minute to equalize, and then controversy struck. 2 minutes after Montero's equalizer, Ecuador were awarded a controversial penalty. The penalty seemed stonewall to the referee, but on replay, it very much looked like contact was initiated outside the box. Nevertheless, the call stood, no real protest from the Jamaican players, and Ecuador converted the penalty to sink their dreams of a big-time achievement. It was a contentious ending, but still an impressive run for the boys in the end, and Daly in particular benefited from that run, going on to represent the senior team nearly 30 times, including at the 2011 Gold Cup. Number 8. First Final Fours at the Gold Cup. Most people remember Jamaica's first real challenge at the CONCACAF Gold Cup being the 1998 edition in the US. It took place just over 2 months after the Reggae Boyz qualified for France '98, was our first real preparation for the tournament, and allowed the wider world to take notice of a team that was gradually growing in popularity and intrigue. Heck, it was even featured in the movie Belly, the one featuring DMX and Nas, and of course the late great Louis Rankin during that year. Their debut was a nil-nil draw against then reigning world champions Brazil, with Warren Barrett in the Jamaica goal keeping Romario and Co at bay throughout, earning them a bit of credence after their opening showing. They then went on to beat Guatemala and El Salvador to surprisingly win their group before Luis El Matador Hernandez ended their Gold Cup quest with a golden goal in extra time of their semi-final matchup. Romario sat their chances at third place days later, but the tournament for the Reggae Boyz was looked at as a success and showed a bit of what we could do before we journeyed off to France. But did you know that this wasn't Jamaica's first run to the Gold Cup semis? Yup, the boys did this just 5 years earlier when, thanks to a win over Honduras and a draw against Panama, the boys had France from a group that also included the United States, who they narrowly lost to in Dallas thanks to a late Eric Ronaldo goal in their opener. They were much more handily beaten by the Mexicans in the semifinal at the Azteca, that time losing 6-1, before drawing the third place game with Costa Rica to share bronze with the Central American side. The likes of Paul Tegat Davis, Hector Wright, and Walter Boyd were catalysts in that run. The first run that showed Jamaican football was slowly but surely heading in the right direction. Number 7. Making the Under 17 World Cup twice. Jamaica didn't have to wait too long, thankfully, after France '98 to see itself on such a big stage again at any level. While the senior team was rightfully attracting all the attention, the under 17 boys were busy making history of their own. On home soil, the boys topped a qualifying group for the 1999 FIFA Under 17 World Cup in New Zealand, including wins against Honduras and Costa Rica before a draw against the US in their final group game, clinched a maiden berth in the Showpiece Youth Tournament. Led by youth football standout Keith Kelly, who would sign a deal with Ligue side Paris Saint-Germain the following year, the boys were drawn in a World Cup group that included Burkina Faso, Paraguay, and Qatar. Unfortunately, it was a baptism of fire for the boys, and after losing 1-0 to Burkina Faso in the opener, the boys were burned badly by Paraguay and Qatar, who they lost to 5-0 and 4-0 respectively. That said, it was encouraging to see teams at youth level already making this jump following what the senior boys did, showing the strides and investment made in the program were paying off. 12 years later, the boys again qualified for the Under 17 World Cup, this time beating Honduras in the knockout stages of the CONCACAF qualifying tournament to book their spot, this time with the World Cup being held in Mexico. The boys were much more competitive and entertaining at times at the 2011 Under-17s, losing by the closest of margins to Japan, thanks to a Jamaican-born player, oddly enough, and Argentina before drawing 1-1 with France in their final group game. This team featured senior national team regular Alvas Powell, as well as the likes of Carlo Benbow, Zelano Barnes, and Omar Holness, no relation to the Honorable Brogard. They very nearly made it back for a third time in 2015 as well, but were denied in the most agonizing of fashions, losing to the United States in a playoff on penalties during a qualifying tournament in Honduras. Number 6, reaching the 2001 FIFA Youth World Championships. 2 years after the Under-17s reached their first World Cup, the Under-20s followed suit as they made it 3 World Cups for Jamaica in as many years at all levels, making the 2001 FIFA World Youth Championship in Argentina. Kelly, the spine of the Under-17 squad that made it to New Zealand 2 years earlier, was again at the forefront as the Under-20s made the World Cup in 2001, a squad that featured future senior reggae boys like Omar Daly, Fabian Dawkins, and Shavar Thomas. They made it to the tournament thanks to finishing second at their group at the 2001 CONCACAF Under-20 qualifying tournament in Toronto, Canada. After drawing with Mexico and beating Honduras in the group stage, a 0-0 draw against the host was enough to clinch one of the 2 automatic berths to the World Cup, drawing a group that included Egypt, Finland, and the Under-20 World Cup host, Argentina. The under-20s opened the tournament with a 0-0 draw against the Egyptians and nearly repeated that scoreline against Finland if not for a late strike by the Finnish 5 minutes from time, which virtually ended any realistic hope of qualifying from the group. The hosts smashed them 5-1 in the final game, though Dawkins did get a consolation, which was Jamaica's only goal in the competition. This remains the last World Cup of any sort on the men's side that Jamaica has qualified for, with the closest the under-20s have come to returning being in 2013 when they reached the quarterfinals of the CONCACAF qualifying tournament before comfortably being beaten by Mexico, who clinched a spot at that year's U20 World Cup at their expense. Number 5. Luton Shelton goes duck hunting against the United States. No team in CONCACAF was a bigger thorn in the Reggae Boyz side than Uncle Sam's army. The red, white, and blue often left us feeling blue in the end, as before 2012, we'd never beaten them in any competitive or friendly match. After 18 failed attempts, yes, 18, including 5 draws in their previous 6 World Cup qualifiers, Reggae Boyz fans are wondering if and when they would finally have their day against the Stars and Stripes. Step forward, Luton Shelton. Shelton, formerly an English Premier League player at Sheffield United and by that point playing his football in Turkey, debuted for the boys in 2004, scoring 4 goals in his debut in a Caribbean Cup qualifier, which, by all accounts, is the most goals ever scored in an international debut ever. By the time they took the field for their critical 2014 World Cup qualifier against the States at the National Stadium in September 2012, Shelton had racked up a record 33 goals for his country but had never scored before against the States. It looked like business as usual after 36 seconds thanks to Clint Dempsey's strike. Oh, here we go again. Wait, hold on. Rudolph Austin's deflected free kick midway through the first half restored parity, and the two traded back and forth blows before the hour mark when Shelton was fouled in a very promising position. This was Shelton's chance. He wasn't a free kick specialist by any means, and the guy he was trying to beat in goal, Tim Howard, was a pretty solid prem keeper at Everton for a number of years, who once made PFA Team of the Year while at Manchester United. None of that mattered though. One beautifully curled strike from Shelton's right boot gave Howard no chance at his near post and took himself as well as his country out of the proverbial wilderness against the States. Finally a win. Finally a goal for Shelton against one of CONCACAF's heavyweights. While it would prove to be Shelton's penultimate goal in a Reggae Boyz jersey, it's a moment all of us will forever cherish. Obviously, these days, Shelton has much bigger things on his mind, but is taking on these most difficult challenges with a smile, and moments like these that he gave us in 2012 will put smiles on our faces every time we remember it. Number 4. Near Golden Rush, 2015 Gold Cup. Unfortunately, Jamaica failed to build on that historic moment against the United States. They would lose their next 3 matchups to them during that 2014 qualifying campaign and failed to win a single game in the hexagonal phase, bringing their hopes of making it to Brazil to a screeching halt. They also failed to make the 2013 Gold Cup following a disastrous Caribbean Cup campaign, so by the time the 2015 Gold Cup came around, expectations were pretty low, if not non-existent really. Out went Reggae Boy through and through Theodore Whitmore, and in came German boss Winfried Schaefer, who once managed Cameroon to an African Nations Cup in 2002, while also qualifying them for that year's World Cup in South Korea and Japan. The JFF hoped Schaefer's German engineering would fix the wreck that the national team became, and the progress was somewhat noticeable. Passing improved a bit, they at least showed some semblance of pressing when required, and a structure seemed to be in place that could be built on. At the 2015 Gold Cup, co-hosted by the US and Canada, they marked their return to the tournament with a 2-2 draw against Costa Rica before a stoppage time winner by Rudolph Austin helped them see off Canada. A 1-0 victory against El Salvador in Toronto, followed by a win by the same scoreline in Baltimore against Haiti during the quarterfinals, helped Jamaica return to the semis for the first time since that famed '98 campaign. Of course, this meant that they had to beat the US to get there. Every time in Gold Cup history pretty much, Jamaica lost to the Americans, and it was fully expected history would repeat itself when the two met at Atlanta's Georgia Dome. But it would be the US whose game went south in the Dirty South, as a header off a throw-in of all things by Darren Mattox gave us the lead before an inexplicable mistake by Brad Guzan in the American goal set up Giles Barnes for a free kick at the edge of the 18. Much like Shelton in our last entry, Barnes hit a textbook curler to find the net, then went kung fu on the corner flag as Jamaica kicked down the door towards a memorable result in the first half. Quite frankly, the final shouldn't have been against Mexico, as they were gifted ridiculous penalties against Costa Rica and Panama to advance to that final. But Mexico it was, and unfortunately for Jamaica, Mexico finally found their full gear, as Andres Guardado's volley and they're capitalizing on a second half disaster class by defender Michael Hector ended our dream of our first major international trophy. It was a tough end to an otherwise enjoyable journey, igniting real belief that one day we'd be CONCACAF's golden team. Number 3, near Golden Rush, 2017 Gold Cup. There's that all too familiar word near again. If 2015 was a case of close but no cigar, the 2017 Gold Cup was when we got the cigar and were about to light it up, but it was taken away from us just as the light was about to hit it. The boys came into the Gold Cup determined to right the wrongs of 2 years prior, while also carrying heavy hearts after the passing of JFF head honcho Captain Horace Burrell, the controversial yet groundbreaking figurehead that set the foundation for Jamaica's rise from also-rans to France 98. They also came into the tournament with a goalkeeper who was proving himself to be one of Major League Soccer's best. From the jump, Andre Blake, who was on Jamaica's bench during their 2015 run, was determined to prove his stock at the Gold Cup, a stock that had already linked him to clubs across Europe. Blake impressed as Jamaica emerged from their group, especially during their 0-0 draw during Mexico in the second group game. The Philadelphia Union man boasted a 6'4" in stature, but his importance to the team throughout the tournament was immeasurable. In the quarterfinal against Canada, he proved a stubborn resistance to the Canucks with acrobatics left and right, steady distribution, and helped Jamaica preserve a lead they established with goals early in each half. In the semis, once again against Mexico, he made a quick thinking adjustment to keep the game 0-0 with an instinctive kick save, and once again, the Mexicans found him incredibly frustrating to get past. The boys, who didn't feature a single European-based player in their squad during this tournament, needed more to drive past the Mexicans on this night though, and it was a taxi that ensured their path to the final was clear. Once again, it was a famous free kick that led the boys to a historic win as his 86-minute peach left the Mexican keeper still with no chance. Instead of going mental like most would do in such a situation, Lawrence quickly gathered his teammates as they paid tribute to Burrell, who passed away just a month before the tournament started. Back to the final, and another matchup with the US of A was looming, all that was standing between themselves and finally getting their hands on Gold Cup glory. This time, when the boys got gut punched, first by Blake getting injured having to be subbed early on, then by a Jose Altidore free kick on the stroke of half time, Jamaica answered relatively quickly thanks to a Javon Watson equalizer. They were close to taking the lead too in the 74th minute when Alvas Powell met a near post cross from O'Neal Fisher, but couldn't quite get the cleanest contact on the ball and was blocked out for a corner. Extra time loomed, but then the late game fortune which helped Jamaica get to this point deserted them at the worst possible time, as a misplaced Jermaine Taylor header fell to the feet of Jordan Morris, who crushed our dreams 2 minutes from time with one swing of the boot to win the US the Cup. Excruciating. Of all the losses that we've suffered, and Lord knows that we suffered enough, this was the toughest one to swallow. But when you really consider it, it was a great achievement knowing that we were even this close to being Gold Cup champions, especially given the fact we did not have any players based in England or any other European country helping the cause this time. Blake rightfully won the Golden Glove. Damian Lowe, the son of Reggae Boyz class of 98 member Onandi Lowe, impressed in defense. And really, we could be proud of the fact that we actually made 2 straight Gold Cup finals, but still, our yearning for our trophy is stronger than ever, knowing that we came so close, but ultimately fell just short. Number 2, Girls Run the World, qualifying for France 2019. When you consider the nuances and layers of the Reggae Girlz story, there's a compelling argument that could be made that this should be heralded as Jamaica's top football moment. The fact that despite being one win away from making the 2007 Women's World Cup just a few years earlier, the Reggae Girlz program became extinct, going out with a relative whimper. The fact that despite the journey they would later embark on, they were dealing with all sorts of disputes with pay, issues at times with preparation, and so on. The rest of the world only recently got exposed to the issues we long knew the girls' program faced throughout its existence. The senior women's program was cut by the JFF in 2010 due to a lack of funding and sponsorship, and the country hadn't played a match in 6 years until Cedella Marley, the eldest daughter of Jamaican music's GOAT, Bob Marley, stepped in. This eventually triumphant story cannot be told without Cedella, as it was her investment, her push to give the girls a new look and re-establish an otherwise unheralded reputation that set the foundation for what was to follow. They got the financial support, were able to recruit players with Jamaican heritage primarily from the United States for the program, and as we mentioned before, they had a talented young gem in Khadija Shaw waiting to be unlocked. Going into qualifying for the 2019 Women's World Cup in May 2018, the team was unranked by FIFA just a year prior, and their hopes for France nearly ended just as quickly as they started. The girls needed a spirited comeback from a 2-0 deficit against Haiti in Port-au-Prince, drawing 2-2 in their final group game of Caribbean qualifying to leapfrog them on goal difference above the host for top spot and automatic qualification for the 2018 CONCACAF Women's Championship. At the CONCACAF Women's Championship, they frustrated once World Cup semi-finalist Canada in the opening game, only losing 2-0 before Shaw, whose equalizer against Haiti got them here, scored early in the second half to beat Costa Rica, who had been at the Women's World Cup in 2015. They crushed Cuba 9-0 in the final group game, setting themselves up for 2 cracks at making the Women's World Cup. After the US annihilated them in the semis, their second chance came in a third-place playoff against fellow hopefuls Panama. Desperate to avoid an intercontinental playoff against Argentina to make the World Cup, both teams laid everything on the line, and after Jamaica took the lead twice, including in extra time, Panama leveled the scores, meaning the two would settle who would book a trip to France via penalties. Reggae Girlz manager Hugh Menzies channeled his inner Louis van Gaal, substituting starting goalkeeper Sydney Schneider for Nicole McClure near the end of the game. The move proved a masterstroke as McClure saved twice from the spot, and PSV Eindhoven's Dominique Van Flaza struck from the spot to send the girls, who were literally no more less than 5 years prior, to their first ever Women's World Cup. Not only was this the Reggae Girls' first World Cup, it was their first meaningful exposure outside of the Pan American region, playing friendlies in Europe for the first time and in South Africa, plus players were being snapped up by clubs in Italy, France, and Norway. This was a meal ticket of sorts for players hungry to prove themselves on bigger stages. The results once they got to France were bluntly inevitable, but the performances, particularly against Brazil and Australia, were encouraging, with Sydney Schneider looking like a borderline worldie in the former, while Havana Solon made history in the latter, firing home Jamaica's first Women's World Cup tally off a Shaw pass. Most of all, this kind of exposure and ability to test themselves against top sides was a much needed boost to the program. Despite the shine the girls received from this memorable achievement, lots of clouds still hang over the program going forward, as there's been increasing signs of distrust between players and the federation, peaking thanks to a pay dispute which led to a much publicized player protest and also led to Menzies leaving his post. But with players gaining more experience in bigger leagues, the brimming young talent that forms the team's core, and Cedella remaining 100% committed to the cause, the hope is that their recent achievements attracts a greater push from the people charged with supporting them, rather than the plug being pulled again on such a promising entity. Number 1. Rising up to new heights, the class of 98. Every moment we've looked at today, moments that had significance historically in one way or another, is linked to and inspired by this landmark achievement, not just for Jamaican football, but for sports and culture on a whole. Qualifying for France 98 breathed new life into an island that desperately needed an injection of positivity and unity. especially as the economy and way of life overall in Jamaica was changing and not necessarily for the better. Few things unite people from all walks of life like sports, and when the final whistle blew at the National Stadium on November 16, 1997, even people who didn't like or know anything about sports couldn't help but get in on the hype. Theodore Whitmore took the field with flag in tow when the final whistle blew as thousands in the stands waved their own flags in approval, signaling a new dawn for the then 35-year-old island. It took a lot of work to get to this point. It took Captain Burrell's election in 1994 and subsequent hiring of Brazilian René Simoes to lay the groundwork. Simoes, the first foreign coach to lead Jamaica's national team, garnered instant results from the boys during qualifying, topping a group that included Honduras and Mexico, beating the latter for the first time ever thanks to a late header by Ian Pepe Goodison, Jamaica's all-time leading cap player. This statement of intent from the boys prompted Samoas and the Federation hierarchy to recruit as much talent with Jamaican heritage as possible as they sensed a real opportunity was there. In came the likes of Wimbledon star Robbie Earle, Chelsea's Frank Sinclair, Portsmouth's Paul Hall, and Derby County's Dion Burton. Burton in particular proved pertinent to the boys' qualification hopes. After the boys lost 3 of their first 4 games in the hexagonal round, the Derby County striker found a purple patch of form at the most opportune time, scoring in 4 straight games, including winners against Canada and Costa Rica, netting in El Salvador, and, most crucially, finding a quick-fire leveler in the United States a minute after going down due to a penalty. His streak, combined with Jamaica's defensive stability, culminated in a hot but memorable mid-November day when the program's ambitious mission was finally realized. The buzz from that moment until their debut in France was non-stop, from a public holiday the next day to endless press and documentaries made about the journey to that famous Rise Up song featuring many of Jamaican music's elite. It was literally all we could talk about until June 14, 1998 when the moment finally arrived. Against fellow debutants Croatia, Jamaica didn't look intimidated or out of place. Robbie Earle led Tyus to equalize on the stroke of half-time to give us a bit of history, and had Burton headed home from point-blank range right after Croatia retook the lead, Jamaica could well have gotten something from that game. Then the Argentina debacle happened, a debacle that for some reason a Russian group named Shave made a song about. I'm not making this up, Google it, it's quite weird, where the angel Gabriel Batistuta beat us over the head with his heel. But against Japan, Theo Whitmore, who BBC commentator John Champion labelled as the most unlikely looking footballer at the entire World Cup, proved just how looks can be deceiving, as his pair of goals ensured Jamaica was leaving France '98 a winner, something a lot of countries who've been on this stage making their debuts can't say. A joyous end to a wonderful journey, a journey the Reggae Boys have yet to make on the senior side since, and Lord knows we could do an entire video on why that is, but one that will forever be cherished and we hope one day will be replicated. That's the end of our original top 10 countdown. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel Original Jamaican, and we'll see you next time.